Hello everyone. Today I will tell you a story. The story is titled, Boy Follows Me from Room to Room. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you appreciate me. You can skip this if you don't and Opos, like this video. Thank you very much. The story begins as follows. There are days when nothing special happens, and yet everything feels quietly meaningful. That morning was one of those days. I woke up without an alarm, sunlight slipping gently through the curtains, and before I could even stretch properly, I felt it, the familiar presence of Boy. He didn't bark. He didn't jump onto the bed. He simply stood there, his black eyes watching me with calm curiosity, tail swaying slowly like a metronome that kept time with my breathing. When I finally sat up and put my feet on the floor, Boy rose immediately, as if that movement was his cue. Wherever I went, he would go too. I walked into the bathroom. Boy followed, stopping just outside the door, lying down neatly as if he understood that this was my space, but still close enough to feel connected. I brushed my teeth and caught his reflection in the mirror. He tilted his head, confused by the strange human ritual, but never once looked away. When I moved to the kitchen, he was already there, his paws making soft tapping sounds against the floor. I filled a glass of water. He sat. I opened the fridge. He stood. I turned around, and there he was, my shadow with fur. What made it funny wasn't that he followed me. It was how seriously he did it. Every movement of mine seemed important to him, as if I were on a mission and he was my loyal assistant, making sure I didn't get lost in my own house. Sometimes I stopped suddenly just to see what he'd do. Each time, he almost bumped into my legs, then looked up at me with mild embarrassment, as if apologizing for being too devoted. That look alone could soften even the most stressful thoughts. I hadn't planned to do anything special that day, but Boy had already decided. Today was a day to stay together. As the day unfolded, the house became a map of small shared moments. I moved from the living room to the bedroom, then back again, carrying laundry, checking my phone, sitting down, standing up, ordinary things that usually go unnoticed. But with Boy following me from room to room, every step felt gently acknowledged. When I sat on the sofa to read, Boy circled twice before settling near my feet. Not on my lap, not demanding attention, just close enough so that our presence overlapped. When I stood to grab a notebook from the desk, he stood too. When I returned, he followed, as if thinking, ah yes, this is where we are now. At one point, I tested him. I walked into the bedroom, waited until he lay down, then quietly slipped into the kitchen. Less than 10 seconds later, I heard the familiar sound of paws rushing toward me, slightly panicked, followed by a relieved sigh when he found me. His loyalty wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was consistent. In the afternoon, sunlight warmed the floor near the window. I lay down to rest for a moment, and Boy immediately adjusted his position, choosing a spot where he could see my face clearly. Every time I shifted, his ears twitched. Every time I opened my eyes, he was already looking at me. There was something deeply comforting about that. Not because he needed me to entertain him, feed him, or play with him, but because he simply wanted to be where I was. No expectations, no conditions. Even when I moved to another room for just a minute, Boy followed. He never asked why. He never hesitated. To him, my movement was reason enough. And in that quiet loyalty, the house felt warmer, fuller, more alive. As evening arrived, the house grew quieter. The outside world faded behind closed windows and drawn curtains. I moved slowly now, tired but peaceful. And still, Boy followed. From the kitchen to the hallway. From the hallway to the bedroom. From the bedroom back to the living room. At some point, I laughed and asked him, "Don't you get tired?" He answered by wagging his tail once and sitting down beside me. That was his way of saying no. This is exactly where I want to be. Before bed, I turned off the lights one by one. Each click was followed by the soft shuffle of paws. When I finally lay down, Boy curled up near the bed, letting out a small sigh that sounded like contentment itself. He didn't need words to explain his love. He showed it through presence, through patience, through following, not because he was lost, but because he had already found what mattered. And in that moment, I realized something important. Boy wasn't just following me through rooms. He was choosing connection again and again in the simplest way possible. Boy following me from room to room might seem like a small, even ordinary habit, But in today's fast-paced world, it carries a quiet lesson we often forget. We live surrounded by distractions, phones, deadlines, constant noise, and yet we crave something deeply simple: presence. Boy doesn't follow me because he wants something. He follows because being together matters more than doing anything special. From Boy, we learn that love doesn't always need grand gestures. Sometimes, love is just staying close. It's choosing to be present even when nothing exciting is happening. In our relationships, with family, friends, or even ourselves, we often rush ahead, physically or emotionally. Boy reminds us to slow down and notice who is walking beside us. Animals like Boy also teach us responsibility and empathy. When we care for them, we practice patience, understanding, and unconditional acceptance. In return, they offer us loyalty without judgment, comfort without words, and companionship that feels honest and grounding. In modern life, where loneliness can exist even in crowded spaces, the bond between humans and animals becomes a quiet source of healing. By learning from Boy, by being more present, more attentive, and more gentle, we can create a life that feels warmer, more connected, and more humane for everyone involved.